I'm chatting here with Mr. Chris Orwig. He's a man of many talents. He's a photographer first and foremost, but he's also an educator. He's written many books, so he's an author as well. He teaches at Brooks Institute of Photography, or which is now known as Brooks Institute, down
Yep.
in beautiful, sunny Santa Barbara and Ventura.
Yep.
And he's agreed to come on to talk about a new workshop that he's going to be teaching. I think it's coming up next week, right, Chris? It's called Create Compelling Photographs with Photoshop in Lightroom. So, Chris, welcome.
Yeah, Frederick, always good to hang out, and thanks for taking the time to chat. Appreciate it. Yeah.
No, thank you. Hey, before we get started, where are
Yeah.
you? Is this like a wing
Yeah.
in your house
Yeah, I
that you
know.
have a foosball table in? What's up with that?
Yeah. No, I am at lynda.com today. I record courses for them, as you know, and I ducked into the air hockey room. So there's an air hockey table behind me, and this is where the staff come to play. And there's another area where they have foosball, which is kind of fun, and giant bean bags, and so it's kind of a fun place. And
It reminds me of Yahoo back in the day. For those.
yeah. And there's obviously, I don't know if you can see in the background, but there's the yellow walls. So there's that lynda.com yellow everywhere too, which is
Nice. And I
fun.
would presume that yellow is Linda's favorite color.
I don't know. I don't know. I've never thought to ask her that, but it does kind of it reflects her well because she is so bright and
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
this. So
Chipper. Cool.
yeah,
Okay, so let's talk about this a little bit. I want to be
yeah,
respectful of your time. I know you got to get back into the recording booth, but um, creating compelling photographs. So just take me through that
yeah.
workshop and the kind of things that people are going to learn in there.
Sure, yeah. So this one's all focused on software, obviously, Lightroom and Photoshop. Yet the trick, at least for me with those tools, is to really think about how you can use them to express something. Sometimes Photoshop, or not sometimes, a lot of times it's overwhelming.
Hmm.
Or sometimes when we use those tools, we're thinking about solving problems.
Yeah.
So we say, okay, what's wrong with the highlights? What's wrong with the shadows? And so we're sort of in this problem-solving mode versus in creating something compelling or interesting mode.
Hmm.
So what this workshop's about is it's a small one, so a small group of people in sort of a comfortable environment where we say, okay, well, how do we take what we have and get it somewhere versus fix it? So that's kind of the idea, and then the practical side of that is the Lightroom piece and the Photoshop piece.
Yeah. So let's talk about the Lightroom Photoshop piece, and this sort of speaks to where I am right now in terms of finding that line of demarcation or
Yeah.
the DMZ between North Korea, South Korea. How do you know when to leave Lightroom and go into Photoshop or vice versa? What's the line for you? I know it's different for
Yeah,
everybody,
yeah.
but for you.
It is different. I think, well, Lightroom really for me, I can finish an image up to 80% complete, and
Hmm.
then it takes the last 20, which I think is the most important part actually, is Photoshop. And so to go there though, I have to be, I think, excited about something about the photograph in order to make the jump, to make that leap. And it's the same thing too when I'm taking a picture. I think we all experience this. You're sort of everything's interesting, but you're like, wait, I'm committing, I'm clicking.
Hmm.
And so part of the workshop too is helping people to think about what that is for them, when to do that, how to do that, and then to go to those, whatever tool it is, to go to that with kind of maybe a vision in mind versus um, trying to solve a problem. Some of my students are sort of hunched over and frustrated or intimidated and saying, okay, well, let's let go of that and let's ask ourselves, how can we create something that's interesting or engaging or whatever it is.
Yeah. So tactically, when you're that 20% that you
Yeah.
do in Photoshop, what kinds of things are you doing in there?
Yeah, that's a great question. I
Which, of
mean,
course, it depends
yeah,
on
yeah.
the image and all that stuff, but
Right,
generally,
right. That being said, yeah.
yeah.
Um, I think you and I have talked about this before, but a lot of it is I'm getting there, and I'm thinking about how can I work on the image but also hide my tracks, meaning so that the Photoshop work isn't too loud, or because someone looks at a picture and says you're good at Photoshop, I've missed the mark. Like and
Right.
fortunately, no one's really said that yet. Even though I think I'm pretty good at Photoshop,
Yeah,
and
it's like it's the wrong compliment that photographers want to get. That's kind of
yeah,
like if you had plastic surgery and someone says, Chris, wow, that's an amazing facelift.
Right.
You
You're
don't want
like,
to hear
listen,
that. You want to just say,
don't want to
Chris,
hear
you look
that.
great, right?
Yeah, that's so true. And I've said this other places too, but a friend of mine who's a chef, he was taking this cooking class, and in the class they said you need to use spices and seasonings so that no one can identify what you used. But
Hmm.
so it's adding to the food, but not overpowering it. And the basic example is we've all had food which is too salty, but if it's the right amount, it works well. So anyway, I'm thinking, okay, well, what's the right amount,
Yeah.
right? And then the things I do, I think, are pretty typical. The curves and masking and color balance, or well, there's adjustments, and I don't necessarily think that it's rocket science. But what I'm trying to bring to it is maybe even some creativity or artistry, or back to maybe cooking. You can prepare a meal, you can sort of just throw it together, or like this one friend of mine, when he cooks, it's amazing. It's like art,
Hmm.
and when you sit down at the meal finally, I don't know, there's something to it. So anyway, that's what I'm looking to do, and to add something to it.
Yeah. Yeah. So in the class there, this workshop that you're teaching, if I came to it, what can I expect? I'm going to sit down, and then how are you going to kick things off? What's
Yeah.
the flow? Because I'm like, okay, can I make it to this workshop?
Yeah. So that would be awesome too. But yeah, so the flow basically is, because it's a smaller group, we'll really see where people are. And for these kind of things, I over prepare. So I kind of have like 4 workshops I could do, so to speak.
Hmm.
And I have more exercise files than I need. But then based on the group, because I love the smaller environment. We've all been to like workshops or things where there's 1,000 people or 500 people, and you sit in the audience and you watch and you learn something from that. But I learn actually from the small group where something goes wrong, they can tap my shoulder and say, Chris, what about this? Or I can
Hmm.
tap someone else's shoulder for that matter. So anyway, so the beginning will just be saying, okay, where are we at? What do we want to accomplish? And then beginning with Lightroom, because that's really the starting spot. And there we'll hit library and develop module. And what we'll look at there is basically see where the group skills are and look at how we can notch them up. So I'm
Hmm.
trying to I want to make this one really, because it's smaller, good for who's there, not just good for me because, you know,
Yeah. And because it's a smaller group, like versus those large groups where
yeah,
and I've been to those, and they're great,
yeah, they
but
are. Yeah,
you're in a school of fish, and one individual fish is not going to get any attention. This
right.
is smaller, so people could raise their hand and
Yeah,
say, "Hey, can you tell me again what the hotkey is for getting into the develop module?"
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, they can say that, or they can say, "Hey, Chris, you're crazy," or whatever they want to say, and then we can dialogue and talk about that. Or they can talk about vision, and we can, so it won't just be tools like here's the button. Hopefully, there'll be a little bit more. And because I think that's really what makes the difference when using the tools is, having kind of an idea of what you want to convey or communicate or express,
Hmm.
and figuring out how you can pull that off. And so, in a sense, which is kind of funny to say, it's not so much about the tools; it's about the image
Yeah.
and how do we use these tools to get there and to get to that photograph. And so, that's essentially the idea.
Yeah, yeah, that's exciting. It just sounds inspirational. It sounds like this workshop is going to be 50-50 inspiration and how do you translate that potential energy of inspiration into the two-dimensional photograph, right?
Yeah, I think so because I mean, the reality of it is, I don't know how it is for you, but when I open an image up, I'm usually disappointed because it's not as good as the experience, or just, and also when I open an image up, I'm opening up 500 or whatever, fit on the card,
Yeah.
more maybe. And a lot of times we can get sort of bogged down in that process. And so what I want to try to do is breathe some fresh air into that and say, okay, well, how do we get excited about this? And how do we bring some artistry to this? And how do we create something that maybe is compelling? And part of that, I think, is getting really good technically. So it's not that I'm not covering technique.
Yeah.
Um, any musician or artist, they get so good at the violin that it's the violin, their technique is just part of what they're doing. Really, what they're doing is making music. So anyway,
Yeah.
that's kind of
It's like an extend the instrument is an extension of your body when you
yeah,
pass a certain point of skill, right?
right,
Yeah.
right.
It's like playing basketball. At a certain point, you don't even know, you don't have to look at the ball anymore. You
Yeah,
know where it's going to go when you put this much force on this trajectory.
yeah.
You understand all that stuff,
Yeah,
right?
maybe for you, but for me, I'm horrible at basketball. But
Okay,
yeah, no,
okay, foosball.
foosball. There we go. There we go.
You know, if you push it that hard, it's going to go in that corner.
Yeah, yeah, and that's really when things get fun. That's when sparks fly. So yeah,
Yeah, cool. So your workshop, like this again, it's called Creating Compelling. I'm looking at the page now. Creating
yeah,
Compelling Photographs with Photoshop and Lightroom, and it is, as we record this, it's next week. It's Saturday, June 15th, 2013, from 10 to 4.
yeah,
But people should sign up now if they want to get in there. You
yeah,
know.
exactly. Because it is a smaller setting. Yeah, and it would be great to have you. And it's in Santa Barbara, and so hopefully it'll be an enjoyable and inspiring day.
Every time I come to Santa Barbara, there's something about it because if I drive, I'm in the Northern California area, so if I
Yeah,
drive to Santa Barbara,
yeah,
there's a point somewhere maybe north of Pismo Beach, or as soon as
right,
you cross the hill and you start seeing the Pacific,
yeah,
the light gets a little more. Like the clarity slider slides over to the right a little bit,
yeah,
and maybe a little bit of saturation, but it
yeah.
happens when you're driving down there. It's crazy.
It is. It's a neat place. And I've done workshops all over, and I love doing them here where I am now, just because of that. I think it is a unique area, and I think what's interesting, and we all know this, when you travel somewhere, it does sort of open you up in different ways. You
Hmm.
know what I mean? And I think it's just when you get out of your normal space, whatever that is,
Yeah.
and go somewhere else, it gives you a chance to sort of think differently and be open to different ideas and to grow. So yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, our brain needs new food in order to grow in different
yeah,
directions.
it does. It
Yeah.
does.
Cool. All right, Chris. Well, thank you. If just to parting shot here, where can people go to kind of see some of the work that you've done and some of
Yeah.
the projects that you're working on, etc.
Yeah, the catch-all is just my domain name. It's my name, chrisorwig.com. And then, yeah, books and TEDx talks and lynn.com courses, all those things, you can find the links there.
Excellent, excellent.
Photographs, student.
And you're at Linda right now. Now, the project that you're working on
Yeah.
there is that top secret, or
Yeah.
can you tell
No,
us what
it's
it
not
is?
top secret. It's I was trying to think of a funny thing to say, but I didn't have anything. But anyway, it's a Lightroom course, Lightroom 5. And
Lightroom 5. Yeah.
working on that. Yeah, and it's always fun to just to dive into the new tool and really try to figure it out. Because for me, I'm in the classroom a lot, and so as we all know, there's sort of a marketing side of software, and then there's the practical, like in the trenches side. And
Yeah.
so for me, it's trying to say, well, what's practical? How does this relate and connect to all of us as photographers? And so that's what I'm doing.
That's cool. And how are you liking Lightroom 5? Do you love it?
I do like it. Yeah, I think Lightroom's a really young tool, so to speak.
It's only 5.
It's only 5, right? Yeah. I think Lightroom, what's the number, or Adobe dodges? I think it's 8. They always change the numbering convention before 8. You can't.
Oh, for Photoshop? Yeah.
Well, any tool.
Oh, yeah. I don't know. I have
Yeah,
no
yeah.
idea.
Anyway, but so we'll see what will happen if they turn it into something else. But anyway, point being is that they've taken something and just made it better incrementally, and I love that versus stuffed a bunch of things in there that we don't need necessarily. So Lightroom to me still has that feeling that they've just taken a good thing, incrementally stepped it up, and they've done that again. And so it's I think that's a little bit less. There's a little less wow factor,
Hmm.
but for me, that makes me more excited because
Yeah,
it's a
I
little
agree. I
function.
agree. Yeah, it's a tool, and you don't need to radically change the tool, especially if millions of people are using it. You just need to
Right.
file it down, sharpen it,
Exactly.
make it better. Yeah.
Make it better, and essentially, if it's helping me to make better pictures, which it is, like literally, I'm all about it. So
Wonderful. Well, Chris Orwig, thank you
yeah,
so much for taking the time to do this.
yeah,
And just behind the scenes, a little inside baseball for the people watching this. This is take 2 on this interview, and I won't tell you why, but
yeah,
this is take 2, and Chris did a fantastic job keeping everything awesome. Perfect.
yeah. Likewise, good to talk, Frederick.
All right. Thanks, Chris.
Okay.